Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are wrestling with a stack of notes that, well, it feels less like a biography and more like a fever dream from the 1970s.
It's a trip for sure.
We're looking at a story that involves CIA spies, Nintendo lawsuits, private islands, and a man who somehow managed to turn a simple piece of cutlery into a 40-year global argument about the very nature of reality.
It is a wild ride. We are, of course, talking about Uri Geller. And if you're listening to this and you grew up anywhere between, say, 1970 and 2000, you likely have a very specific mental image of him.
Oh, absolutely.
He's the guy, staring intensely at a spoon until it just droops like a wilted flower.
The bent spoon. It is such a mundane object to build a whole mythology around, isn't it? It's not a crystal ball or, a magic wand. It's a tool for eating cereal.
Right. But Geller took that spoon and somehow made it the focal point of a massive cultural divide. Became the symbol for this huge debate between psychic power and stage magic.
And that's really the core of what we're going to try and figure out today.
Yeah, that's the central tension we're going to unpack. The source material, which is this mix of a very dense biographical breakdown, some scientific reports from the 70s, legal documents, it all paints a picture of a man who didn't just perform tricks. He fundamentally blurred the lines.
Blurred the lines between what? Illusion and...
Between illusion, psychology, and genuine, belief. He operated in that gray area.
And our mission here is to figure out how he did that. Not just how he bent the spoon, which we'll get to, but how he bent the narrative. How did he convince so many people?
Exactly.
So we're going to look at his rise from a nightclub in Tel Aviv to the couch of The Tonight Show, the scientific test that actually claimed he was the real deal, and then the absolutely bizarre later years.
Those are later years.
Yeah, involving Pokemon and extraterrestrial computers.
We really cannot ignore the extraterrestrial computers.
You can't.
Or the secret sky missions, for that matter. It's a lot to get through, but I think the best place to start is, well, the beginning. Because before he was this global phenomenon, Uri Geller had a surprisingly gritty backstory.
Okay, let's do that. Let's get into that origin story. Because when you see him on TV in his prime, he's this flamboyant, charismatic, almost delicate showman. But he was born in 1946 in Tel Aviv, back when it was still mandatory Palestine.
Right. And his background is this mix of Austrian Jewish and Hungarian Jewish heritage. And right off the bat, in the first few lines of his biography, we find a detail that feels like it was written for a movie script.
What's that?
Geller claims a distant relation to Sigmund Freud on his mother's side.
No way. Really? That's almost too perfect, isn't it?
It is.
You have the father of psychoanalysis, the man who literally mapped the subconscious, and then you have Geller, who would go on to play these incredible mind games with the entire world.
It's perfect branding. Whether it's factually true or not, it sets the stage for the mythos he would build around himself.
It does. It suggests that the mind is kind of the family business.
Exactly. But his childhood wasn't spent in libraries reading Freud. It was actually quite tumultuous. The family moved to Cyprus when he was about 11.
Cyprus. Why Cyprus?
His stepfather ran a hotel there, so they relocated. And this is where young Uri attends a Catholic high school. It's called Terra Santa College, and that's where he learned English.
And that turns out to be a pivotal skill.
Hugely pivotal, because it allowed him to export his act later on. Think about it. If he had only spoken Hebrew or Hungarian, we in the U.S. or the U.K. probably would have never heard of him. His reach would have been so limited.
That's a really good point. It's a practical detail that changes everything. So he gets the language skills, but then he goes back to Israel for military service. And he didn't just, peel potatoes. This was serious.
No, not at all. He joined the Paratroopers Brigade. That's an elite unit. We're talking about the best of the best.
And he saw combat.
Oh, yeah. He served in the Six-Day War in 1967. And this is a really crucial piece of his personal puzzle because he was actually wounded in action. The records mention a scar near his left elbow from the conflict.
I think that's so important for the listener to keep in mind, because later on, when all these skeptics are tearing him apart and calling him a fraud in a silk shirt, right, he has this physical proof of a very hard reality. He was a soldier before he was a psychic. It gives him a kind of credibility that's hard to dismiss.
It adds this layer of, like, a warrior mystic to his brand. It grounds him. It makes him seem more substantial. He's not just some ethereal being floating around. He's a guy who has seen combat.
So what happens after the army? Does he go straight into bending spoons?
Not right away. He actually worked as a photographic model for a while in the late 60s, from 68 to 69.
I can see that. He always had that piercing gaze. The hair was always perfect. He knew how to hold a pose.
He certainly knew how to work a camera.
Oh,
And that comfort with the lens is something that serves him well for the next 40 years. But, around the same time, he started performing for small audiences.
In Israel.
Yeah, in Israel.
Yeah.
In nightclubs, theaters, even on military bases.
Yeah.
He was building a solid local reputation as an entertainer.
So at this point, he's a local celebrity, he's doing the rounds, getting known, but he's not a global icon yet. What was the catalyst? What took him from Tel Aviv to the world stage?
The catalyst has a name, Andrija Puharich.
Puharich. That name appears all over these files. We should probably pause on him for a second because he seems to be the architect of the Geller myth in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
He was a medical doctor, but also a parapsychologist.
Parapsychologist is the key term here. For those who might not know, parapsychology is the study of alleged psychic phenomena, so telepathy, telekinesis, ghosts, but using scientific methods, or at least attempting to.
So he's trying to bring science to the supernatural.
Right, and Puharich was deeply embedded in that world. He was traveling the globe looking for the real deal. He meets Geller in Israel in 1971, sees the act, and becomes completely convinced, or at least he claimed to be convinced, that Geller was it. He'd found his guy.
So Puharich essentially becomes the hype man. He validates Geller with his scientific credentials.
He does more than that. He acts as the bridge to the United States.
Yeah.
He's the one who brings Geller to America and introduces him to serious researchers, to the media, to the scientific community.
So without Puharich, Geller might have just stayed a local act.
It's very possible. Without Puharich providing that veneer of scientific curiosity, Geller might have just been a very successful nightclub entertainer in Tel Aviv. But Puharich told the world, this man isn't doing tricks. He is a scientific anomaly that must be studied.
And that's a much more powerful story.
Infinitely more powerful.
So once he hits the U.S., the Geller effect just takes off. Can you break down what that actually entailed? What was he doing on stage that was blowing people's minds?
The Geller effect essentially refers to psychokinesis mind over matter. The absolute core of the act was bending metal keys and spoons, apparently just by stroking them lightly or concentrating on them.
But it was more than just cutlery, right?
Oh, yeah. He also did telepathy, where he would, describe hidden drawings that someone in another room had made. And he had this famous trick with watches.
The watch trick was huge. I remember hearing stories about this. He would take a broken watch from someone in the audience, one that hadn't worked in years, hold it, and it would just start ticking.
Yes, and he invited the audience at home to do it, too. He'd have people calling into radio shows, watching on TV, shouting, "My grandfather's watch just started. It's been in a drawer for 30 years.
That's incredible. It creates a sense of mass participation. It's not just him doing it. He's making you do it.
Exactly. And crucially, Geller kept the explanation really simple. He didn't use any technobabble or complex spiritual jargon. He just said it was willpower and the strength of his mind.
That simplicity is just brilliant marketing, isn't it? If he had tried to explain it with quantum physics or something, people would have just tuned out.
Of course.
But saying, I just want it to bend, makes it so accessible.
It made everyone feel like maybe they could do it too if they just concentrated hard enough. It was empowering.
But this brings us to the first major conflict in the story. The moment where the strength of his mind hits a brick wall. We have to talk about The Tonight Show in 1973.
This is the stuff of legend. I mean, if you study the history of skepticism, or even just the history of television, this is the Super Bowl. It's a foundational text.
Set the scene for us. It's 1973. Johnny Carson is the undisputed king of late-night television. Geller is this new rising star. Everyone wants to see him perform. The buzz is huge.
Right. But here is the variable that Geller either didn't account for or perhaps just underestimated. Johnny Carson was a magician.
I mentioned this earlier, but I still can't believe it. He was a performer himself.
Yes. Before he was a famous host, he performed magic. He knew the tricks. He knew about sleight of hand, misdirection, all of it. And he was, let's say, healthily skeptical.
So Carson doesn't just want to interview him. He wants to test him under controlled conditions.
Exactly. So Carson consults with James Randi. Now, we are going to talk a lot about James Randi today. He was a professional magician and arguably the world's most famous professional skeptic. He was Geller's Moriarty, his nemesis.
The ultimate rival.
Absolutely. And Randi gave Carson very specific instructions. He said, do not let Geller or his people anywhere near the props. Do not let him use his own spoons. You provide the props, keep them locked up, and only bring them out when the cameras are rolling.
That is such a crucial detail. Usually a magician or a mentalist relies on their own equipment. They know the weight, the feel, any gimmicks.
Precisely. They control the variables. So the show creates this controlled environment. Geller walks out onto the set, expecting to do his usual routine, and instead, he's faced with a table of Carson's props that he's never seen before.
And the result is what the source material describes as a legendary immolation.
A total flameout. Geller just sits there. He looks stunned. He immediately tries to pivot to an interview. He says, I'm surprised because before this program, your producer came and he read me at least 40 questions you were going to ask me.
He's stalling. He's clearly just trying to get Carson to talk to him instead of making him perform under these conditions.
Totally stalling. But Carson is relentless. He's calm but firm. He just says, go ahead, try the spoon.
And then he drops the line that would follow him for the rest of his career. I don't feel strong.
I don't feel strong. He sat there for 22 minutes. 22 minutes of dead air on national television.
I can't even imagine that today. 22 minutes of silence on TikTok or YouTube. You'd be scrolled past in half a second. But back then, the entire country was watching him fail in real time.
It was excruciating. He couldn't bend the spoon. He couldn't do the drawing test. He was sweating. He looked terrified. It was a complete and utter public humiliation.
Geller later said he went back to his hotel room completely devastated. He told his manager, that's it, I'm destroyed. We're packing up and going back to Israel.
He thought it was over.
But this is where the story gets so twisted. This is what I find so fascinating about human psychology and belief. He wasn't destroyed.
No. In fact, his career skyrocketed immediately after that failure. The very next day, he was booked on The Merv Griffin Show.
Why? I mean, how does failing on the biggest stage in America make you more famous? That seems completely counterintuitive.
It's what you could call the logic of the believer. And it's a brilliant piece of reverse psychology, even if it was accidental.
Break that down.
Okay, think about it. If Uri Geller was just a magician doing a trick, the trick would work. A magician's props are mechanical. They don't have bad days. If you have a trick spoon that's designed to bend, it bends every single time.
So the fact that it didn't work made it seem more organic, more real, like a radio signal that sometimes fades in and out.
Precisely. To the trusting public, his failure proved he wasn't bending a trick spoon, because a trick spoon would have worked. His vulnerability, his saying, I don't feel strong, it made him seem authentic. He'd always said, I don't have total control over this power, it comes and goes. And the failure on Carson's show was the ultimate proof of that narrative.
That is a masterclass in spinning a narrative. The skeptics, Randy and Carson, thought they had a smoking gun, but the public saw a martyr. They proved his point for him.
And Geller realized this immediately. He learned that failure, if you frame it correctly, is just another form of proof. It's evidence of authenticity.
So he rides that wave of paradoxical success into the 80s as a massive superstar. And this is where the story goes from, stage magic to full-blown science fiction.
Which brings us to section 3 of our notes. Aliens, spies, and mining millions.
This is where things get really weird.
This is where Andrija Puharich comes back into the picture with a vengeance.
Right. In 1974, Puharich writes this biography, Yuri, a journal of the mystery of Uri Geller. And the claims in this book are, well, they're out there.
They are intergalactic. Puharich claims in this book that Geller wasn't just a psychic. He was an ambassador, a messenger sent by extraterrestrials.
Sent from where?
Specifically from a spaceship called Spectra.
Spectra. It sounds like the villain organization from a James Bond movie, SPECTRE.
It does. And where is Spectra parked? According to Puharich, it's about 53,000 light years away. And he claimed they were communicating through these super intelligent computers called HOVA.
Wait, HOVA? Like the vacuum cleaner? HOVA?
I know, the names are fantastic. But Puharich was deadly serious. He wrote that these entities were the source of Geller's power and were guiding him.
Okay, but did Geller actually go along with this? Did he stand up on stage and say, "Greetings, Earthlings, I'm a messenger from the HOVA computer"?
It's a bit complicated. Puharich claimed that Geller revealed all of this while under hypnosis. So it was a sort of a secret identity that Geller himself wasn't fully conscious of.
That's convenient.
Very. In his waking life, Geller was savvy enough to distance himself from the really specific robot from space narrative. He realized that while people might believe in bending spoons, claiming to be an alien drone might be a bridge too far for the mainstream public.
So he walked a very fine line.
He did. He would say things like, there is a slight possibility that some of my energies have an extraterrestrial connection, but he didn't fully commit to the Spectra story publicly. He kept it vague, which was much smarter.
Probably a wise career move. Psychic is cool, alien drone is a bit niche. But some people must have believed it. Puharich certainly did.
Oh, absolutely. The book was a bestseller. But while all this alien stuff was happening in the background, Geller was apparently getting involved in very real terrestrial espionage. Or at least that's the claim.
The psychic spy angle. The notes mention a 2013 BBC documentary that alleges Geller worked with both the CIA and Mossad.
Yes. The claim is that he was an official secret agent. There's one specific story that's just incredible. He was in Mexico as a guest of the then-president, Jose Lopez Portillo. And Geller claims that during this time, he was tasked with erasing KGB floppy disks.
Psychically.
Okay, let's just pause and look at the mechanics of that. How do you erase a floppy disk with your mind?
According to Geller's account, he did it by chanting the word erase repeatedly at the disks.
He just shouted, "Erase, erase," at a stack of floppy disks.
That is the story. He claimed his mind was able to channel psychic energy into the magnetic strip and wipe the data clean.
Now, from a technical standpoint, a floppy disk is just magnetic storage. Could a human voice or, mind beams actually disrupt magnetic fields to that degree? Physics would say absolutely not. It's not plausible. But you have to remember the context of the time. This was the peak of the Cold War. The U.S. government was genuinely terrified that the Soviets had psychic weapons.
Right, the whole Stargate project and remote viewing stuff.
Exactly. There was a genuine fear in intelligence circles that the Russians were training people to stop hearts remotely or steal nuclear secrets telepathically. It sounds crazy now, but they were taking it very seriously.
So the CIA was basically willing to try anything, even if it sounded completely outlandish.
Of course. If there was even a 1% chance that Geller could do what he claimed, they wanted him on their side, not the other side. So the fact that he was in the room with presidents and intelligence agencies seems to be verified. They were definitely interested in him. Whether he actually erased anything is another matter entirely.
But he wasn't just working for governments. He was also capitalizing on good old-fashioned greed. We have to talk about the mining. This is where the story shifts from espionage to capitalism.
This is where he made his real fortune. By the mid-1980s, he wasn't just performing for applause, he was dousing for dollars. He charged a standard fee of £1 million for his mineral dowsing services.
£1 million. That's incredible. So for the listener who doesn't know, dowsing is usually done with a Y-shaped stick to find underground water. How is Geller doing it for minerals?
His method was a bit more high-tech. He would fly over vast tracts of land in a helicopter, or sometimes just look at geological maps in an office, and he would point to a spot and tell the mining company, "Drill here for gold, or oil, or diamonds."
And these huge multinational corporations actually paid him millions for this. Did it work?
Well, let's look at the Xanax deal that's mentioned in our notes. He was paid $250,000 plus stock options to find diamonds for them.
Okay. $250,000. What was the result?
The report notes, rather dryly, that no diamonds had come from the site identified by Geller.
So he gets paid $250,000, points at a map, they find absolutely nothing, and he just keeps the money.
That's the business model. And it's genius in a way, because mining's a game of probability anyway. Most test drills come up empty. So if a company drills where he pointed and strikes gold, he takes full credit. If they don't, well, geology is a tricky science. It's a no-lose scenario for him.
It's brilliant. He effectively monetized probability and plausible deniability. But surely not everyone was buying this. We talked about Carson, but there was actual scientific testing done, right? It wasn't just talk show hosts and gullible mining executives.
Oh, yes. This brings us to the main battleground, the battle for science. And the story starts at the Stanford Research Institute, or SRI.
Which is a legitimate high-level research organization, not some fringe group.
Not at all. Very serious place. In 1973, two laser physicists, Harold Puthoff and Russell Targ, conducted a series of controlled laboratory experiments with Geller.
And their conclusion was shocking, to say the least. They published a paper in Nature, which is one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world.
To get a paper in Nature is a huge deal.
And what did it say?
It stated, and I'm quoting here, that Geller had demonstrated paranormal perceptual ability in a convincing and unambiguous manner.
Convincing and unambiguous. That is incredibly strong language for a scientific paper.
It's the holy grail for Geller's believers. It became the shield he used for decades. Whenever someone called him a fake, he could pull out the Nature article and say, "Look, I was validated by top scientists at SRI."
So that settles it then. Case closed. He's real.
Not so fast. Because science isn't just about one paper. It's about replication and peer review. And when the skeptics stepped in to peer review the peer review, things started to crumble very quickly.
This is where Ray Hyman comes in. Who was he?
Ray Hyman was a psychologist and an investigator for the Department of Defense. He was a specialist in debunking this kind of stuff. He looked at the protocols used by Puthoff and Targ at SRI and called them, quote, sloppy and inadequate.
Give us an example. How sloppy are we talking here?
Okay, let's take the famous drawing duplication test. The setup was that Geller was in one sealed room and the target drawing was in another room. The goal was to test for telepathy. Geller had to draw what the scientists were looking at in the other room.
Sounds pretty straightforward.
It sounds it. But later investigators found that there was a hole in the wall between the two rooms.
A literal hole. You're kidding me.
A hole, apparently for ventilation or cables. The SRI investigators had stuffed it with some cotton gauze.
Cotton gauze, that's not soundproof. That's not even sight-proof if you get close enough.
It's not. And critically, other critics, like Marks and Kamen, discovered that Geller had access to a two-way intercom system in his room.
Oh, come on. A two-way intercom, so he could potentially just hear the scientists discussing which drawing they were choosing as the target.
That's the theory. That he wasn't reading minds, he was reading the room. He was listening for subtle clues, for whispers, and for a very clever, well-practiced magician, as Hyman called him. It would be easy to exploit those sloppy conditions to gather information.
So the convincing and unambiguous results were a product of a flawed experiment.
That's the skeptical position, yes. And it's pretty compelling.
Okay, so what about the watches? The SRI guys were apparently amazed by the broken watches starting again. What's the debunk for that?
That one has a fascinatingly simple physical explanation. It turns out many old, broken mechanical watches aren't actually broken in terms of their gears. They're just gummed up with old, dried-out oil.
Okay, so the oil becomes thick and creates friction, stopping the gears.
Exactly. When you hold a watch tightly in your warm hand, your body heat transfers to the metal case. This warmth heats up the old, viscous oil, lowering its viscosity, making it thinner and more liquidy. The gears loosen up, the friction is reduced, and the watch starts ticking for a little while.
So it's not psychokinesis, it's thermodynamics. It's just body heat.
It's ninth-grade physics. But to the observer who doesn't know that, it looks like a miracle. Geller takes a dead object, holds it, and brings it back to life. It's a powerful image, even if the science behind it is mundane.
And then there's the Richard Feynman story. I love this one. For our listeners, Feynman was a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, certified genius, but he was also a prankster and a very skilled amateur magician. He knew how not to be fooled.
Right. So Feynman gets a private meeting with Geller, and Geller tries to bend a key for him. But Feynman didn't just hand the key over and look away politely. He and his son watched Geller's hands like hawks. They didn't fall for any misdirection. They didn't let him distract them for a single second.
And what happened?
And in that private setting, with tight, skeptical observation, absolutely nothing happened. Geller couldn't bend the key. He couldn't bend a spoon. He failed completely.
I don't feel strong again.
It's the recurring theme of his entire life. Every single time the controls are tight and the observation is strict, the powers just evaporate.
But Geller didn't just fight his critics in the lab or on TV shows. He took the fight to the courtroom. He was incredibly litigious.
He sued everyone. His strategy seemed to be to silence criticism through legal attrition. Just make it too expensive and time-consuming to criticize him. The feud with James Randi in particular went on for decades, spawning multiple lawsuits.
There's that one case in Japan that really stands out in the notes. It's bizarre.
The shoot himself case. It's a perfect example of his tactics. So Randi gave an interview where he said that a scientist who had been duped by Geller had metaphorically shot himself in the foot. A common English idiom, meaning he had ruined his own career.
Right. A very common phrase.
But the translation of the interview into Japanese came out as the scientist had literally shot himself in the head.
Oh, no. That is a significant difference.
A huge difference. Geller immediately sued Randi for millions of dollars in a Japanese court. He claimed Randi was accusing him of causing a suicide. Randi, who lived in the U.S., technically lost the case by default because he just couldn't afford to fly to Japan and hire lawyers to defend himself.
So did Randi have to pay millions?
The fine was symbolic. It was something like 1/3 of 1% of the damages Geller had asked for. It was a technical victory for Geller, but Randi never paid it because that kind of insult charge isn't recognized in U.S. law. But it shows how aggressive Geller was.
He even sued Timex, the watch company.
He did. They ran a commercial that showed a person bending forks but failing to stop a Timex watch with the tagline, "It takes a licking and keeps on ticking." Geller sued them, And the court not only threw it out, but sanctioned Geller $149,000 for filing a frivolous lawsuit. The judge basically told him you can't sue someone for a joke.
But the one that everyone remembers, or at least the gamers in our audience will remember, is the Nintendo lawsuit.
The Pokemon case. This is absolutely wild, and it went on for 20 years.
So what was the issue?
There is a psychic-type Pokemon called Kadabra. In the original Japanese, its name is Youngerer.
Younger. Yuri Geller. Okay, that's pretty close.
It's very close. And the character is a psychic that is famous for holding a bent spoon. Geller sued Nintendo, claiming they had stolen his identity and likeness without permission.
Okay, that seems somewhat plausible, at least as a basis for a lawsuit.
It does, but he went further. He also claimed that the star and lightning bolt symbols on the Pokemon's chest were Nazi SS imagery, and he accused Nintendo of turning him into an evil occult Pokemon character to corrupt children.
Wow, that seems like a massive escalation. You stole my spoon act, and also you're secretly using Nazi symbols.
It was incredibly heavy-handed, and the result was that Nintendo, to avoid the legal headache, just stopped printing Kadabra trading cards for 2 decades. If you were a kid playing the trading card game, you just couldn't get that card. It was banned because of this lawsuit.
But that had a resolution recently, didn't it? Something changed.
Yes, finally, in 2020. After 20 years, Geller issued a public apology on Twitter and officially released the ban. He basically said, "I'm sorry for what I did. Let the kids have their Kadabra card back."
Why the change of heart after so long?
I think it connects to this larger pivot in his career. At some point in the 2000s, Geller seemed to realize that the serious psychic act wasn't as sustainable in the internet age. There are YouTube videos everywhere debunking the tricks. So he pivoted. He rebranded.
The rebrand. This is when he stopped calling himself a psychic.
Exactly. Around 2008, he started using the term mystifier. He told a German magazine, "I no longer say that I do supernatural things."
That is such a clever legal and semantic distinction. I'm not claiming to have paranormal powers, I'm just mystifying you. It gets him off the hook for needing scientific proof.
It does. It reframes his entire career. He reinvented himself as an entertainer. He started hosting reality TV shows like The Successor in Israel and Phenomenon in the U.S., where he was searching for the next great mentalist.
Which is pretty ironic, isn't it? The guy who insisted he wasn't a magician is now hosting shows where magicians perform standard magic tricks.
It's the ultimate irony. But while he was pivoting on TV, his personal projects got even weirder. I mean, if you thought the aliens were strange, wait until we talk about the football crystals.
Oh, the crystals. I was waiting for this. Geller's a big football fan, apparently.
He is. In the late 90s, he got involved with Exeter City FC, a struggling English football club. He placed energy-infused crystals behind their goalposts to help them win a crucial match.
And did it help?
They lost 5-1 and were relegated from their division.
So crystal energy, 0. Relegation, 1. A resounding failure.
A total failure. But he tried again with another club, Reading FC. He told all their fans to stare into his eyes through the TV and chant, "Win, Reading, win." They managed to get a draw in the match, and he immediately tried to take credit. The team's manager basically had to issue a public statement telling him, "Please stop. My players did the work, not your psychic energy."
He just inserts himself into these narratives, like he has this compulsion to be a part of any big story.
And then there's the island. He bought a Scottish island?
Yes, Lamb Island. He bought it in 2009. It's this tiny, uninhabited volcanic rock off the coast of North Berwick in Scotland.
Okay. What is he doing with a Scottish rock?
Well, this is where the Geller mythology machine kicks into high gear again. According to him, the island holds ancient Egyptian treasure.
Egyptian treasure in Scotland.
Yes. Brought there, he claims, by Skoda, who was the half-sister of the pharaoh Tutankhamun. And as if that weren't enough, he also claims he buried a crystal orb that once belonged to Albert Einstein on the island.
Wait. Why did Albert Einstein have a crystal orb? And why on earth would Geller bury it on a rock in Scotland? The logic isn't the point. The mythology is. He's always building new legend. In 2022, he even declared the island a micronation, the Republic of Lamb. It's basically performance art on a geological scale. That is just unbelievable. And speaking of art, we have to mention the spoon gorilla.
The spoon gorilla, a 12-foot-tall statue of gorilla made entirely of spoons, 40,000 spoons to be exact. It stands in the garden of his former home in Berkshire, England.
Where did he get 40,000 spoons?
This is the amazing part. School children from all over the world mailed them to him. He turned his personal trademark into this literal monument. He said it was meant to amaze sick children.
You know, that's sweet in a very bizarre, surrealist sort of way. It shows that at a certain point, He really leaned into the spoon imagery. He stopped fighting it and just started celebrating it.
We should also touch on his connection to Michael Jackson, because that was a major part of his life for a while and shows his proximity to huge celebrity circles.
They were incredibly close friends for a time. Jackson was the best man at Geller's vow renewal ceremony. You can see why they'd connect. They were both these eccentric, world-famous figures who kind of lived in their own realities, but it all turned sour.
Right, because Geller was the one who arranged the infamous Martin Bashir interview, the documentary Living with Michael Jackson.
That was the documentary that really damaged Jackson's reputation. It showed him in a very strange and to many a very unflattering light. It led to a lot of the legal troubles that define the end of his life.
And after that documentary aired, Geller ended up on Jackson's official enemy list.
It's a sad footnote to a life filled with these incredible celebrity connections. It really shows that blending friendship and business in the world of high-stakes fame is a very dangerous game.
So where is the man himself now? What's he up to?
As of the date of our recording, he claims to be 79 years old. He's moved back to Israel, living in Old Jaffa in Tel Aviv, and he opened the Uri Geller Museum.
Which, I read, features an ancient soap factory that was discovered in the basement during the renovation.
Because of course it does. Nothing is ever simple with Uri Geller. If he buys a building for a museum, it has to have an ancient, mysterious soap factory in the basement. It's all part of the show.
So let's try and bring all of this together. We have a man who was exposed by skeptics, failed spectacularly on national television, made millions dousing for minerals, claimed to talk to aliens from the spaceship Spectra, and sued Nintendo over a Pokemon. What is the final takeaway here?
It brings us back to what I call the Geller paradox. And it's a question for you, the listener, really. Does it actually matter if it's real?
That is the big question, isn't it?
He was exposed multiple times. Scientists explained the tricks. Professional magicians replicated his feats with ease. James Randi wrote entire books methodically explaining how he did every single trick, and yet none of it mattered. He had a 40-year career. He made millions of dollars. He is a household name to this day.
It strongly suggests that people want to believe. They want the world to be more magical than it actually is. They want to believe that if they just concentrate hard enough, they can bend the rules of physics, even just a little.
Precisely. The skepticism didn't stick because the story was just too good. The feeling of wonder he created was more valuable to the audience than the cold, hard facts. I mean, even as late as 2019, he was writing an open letter to the British Prime Minister Theresa May, threatening to stop Brexit telepathically.
Which, we should note, did not work. Brexit happened.
It did not work. His psychic powers were no match for British politics. But he got the headlines. All the newspapers ran the story. And maybe that was the real talent all along. Not bending the spoon, but bending the narrative. He understood the media and human psychology better than almost anyone.
That is a profound thought. The real magic trick was his career itself. He managed to stay famous and relevant for half a century by constantly reinventing the mystery around himself.
I think that's a fair assessment. At the end of the day, he is the ultimate showman.
So, tonight, when you open your cutlery drawer and you pick up a spoon for your soup or your ice cream, just take a closer look at it. Give it a little rub between your fingers, see if it bends.
And if it does, maybe check to see if you're just pressing too hard.
Or maybe, just maybe, you've got the Geller effect. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.